conceptually you understand this concept. In doing risk analysis, PMI has some really good ways to look at the risk probability and the risk hazard, and they do some multiplication, and you come up with some numbers that allow you to deal with risk. And that's all, those are all good tools, and they're all things that you would expect to see in the PMBOK and expect to see in the exam. In addition to that, we routinely talk about what's called a potential problem analysis. And I think Tony probably talked about that about this much last week, is that right? At least threw the words out there. But I want to show you something really quickly and remind you of this, because this can be a really, really valuable tool. It's extremely practical, and for the kinds of projects we do, even home projects, this is something you can use regularly and get a lot of value out of. So the way this works is you start with a WBS item. If you remember, that's going to sound like some kind of an action item. So it's going to look something like procure pump, right? Now I'm going to buy a pump, or I'm going to procure a pump. That's a WBS item. Now, I'm not going to do this kind of analysis on all of my WBS elements. I'm just going to do it on the ones where my project success might depend on this item being successfully implemented. So if I've got 400 WBS elements, I might do a potential problem analysis on 10 or 15, some small number of what I usually call critical tasks, right? Critical tasks, what does that mean? They're either high cost, they're big time safety items, they could cost me a lot of money, they take a lot of the schedule, they require critical resources. Some way I'm going to define that. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to ask a few really, really simple questions that help me do my risk analysis. Procure pump. The first question I'm going to ask is, what could go wrong? What's the potential problem that could arise with procure pump? So what do you think of?
Not in stock. Delivery time.
Delivery time. Not in stock.
Terms and conditions.
Terms and conditions are bad. Costs too much.
You receive one, don't work.
Oh, it doesn't work when it arrives.
You don't have utilities that can support it.
Okay, utilities, wrong. All right, you see, I can go down through here and I can come up with a lot of potential problems. Okay, I'm going to throw one down here. They send me the wrong color. Okay? And the reason I'm doing that is because the next question I'm going to ask is it a big deal if that happens? Is it a big deal if they send me the wrong color?
Absolutely.
Probably not.
Deal breaker.
It could be, but in a lot of cases, that's probably going to be a no, never mind. My point there is, if the answer to that is no, I stop my analysis. I'm not going to worry about that, because if the utilities are wrong, is that a big deal? Probably is. If it doesn't work when it arrives, that's probably a big deal, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Any of those tasks where I say that potential problem is a big deal, I'm going to continue the analysis. So I'm going to ask two more questions. I'm going to say, if utilities are wrong, what's my preventative action? How am I going to make sure that when it comes time to install that pump? Now, notice what we've done. We've overlapped tasks, right? Because I said procure pump, now we're talking about install pump. So that potential problem probably goes with that WBS element, not the one we started with. But now, we can have that conversation now because you guys understand WBS, you understand how they relate, you understand, right? But that's okay. So that potential problem goes with install pump. So the utilities are wrong. I go to install the pump, the utilities are wrong. How am I going to prevent that from happening?
Bring in engineers to find out what utilities it needs.
Okay, I can either fix the utilities or
Buy a different pump.
buy a different pump, right? I have two different preventative actions. And that goes right here. My preventative action is redesign it. Redesign the utilities. All right, I have told you from the very beginning, all of your actions go where? In the WBS. You just created a new work breakdown structure item that says revise or modify or repair the utilities so that it works with that pump. What did I just do?
Scope creep.
Scope creep. Why is that important?
No, it's not scope creep.
Budget,
It's
money.
It's change management if I do it right. Because now there's more money required and schedule required. By doing my risk assessment, I just created more work that creates more schedule, that creates a requirement for more money. Everybody understand that? See the relationship between doing the risk management and scope creep or change management as we prefer? Yeah.
So now, in that scenario, would you just add that as part of your contingency, or would you go back and re-baseline?
Right? Where am I in my planning? Am I on the front end and I'm just planning this project and I'm doing my risk analysis up front and I've just said, holy cow, there's more work to be done? If so, it goes into my baseline. If I didn't do my risk analysis until 6 months into the project, when I turn this part over to the people who are really going to take care of this and they say, hey, wait a minute, now how am I going to handle that? Right? That money may have to come out of either a change request, because if my customer told me the utilities were a certain way and I planned on it being that way, and then I get to this point and it's not that way, how do I deal with that?
Off it up.
It's a change management, right? It's a change. Because in all your documents, you said the utilities were a certain way. I get here to install this pump and they're not. Okay? That's a good question. The point for us today is to understand the process. I've just gone from potential problem to preventative action. I want to identify these problems as soon as possible because I would like to come up with actions to prevent those bad things from happening. Okay? So, now, am I going to do this for every one of my WBS elements? Why not? Cost a ton of money, and I can't afford all that time or money to do it. So I do it on what kind of items did I say? Critical items. And that's why I'm going to identify those that really impact the project. I'm going to do a potential problem analysis. I'm going to come up with preventative actions which go in my WBS. It's part of my scope, right? Scope baseline is made up of WBS, WBS dictionary, huh? Right? Scope statement, right? So this goes in the WBS. All right, then, from a risk management perspective, have I done everything I should do? How do you know that? Because there's another column on the form. Right? So is that going to be your answer? Yes. All right. What? Almost said the answer. What have I not covered?
Cost and schedule.
Yeah, we kind of covered that when we went through the WBS, and you told me you were going to have to do that. But I've said, here's the potential problem, and here's what I'm going to do to prevent that bad thing from happening. That's a preventative action. What have I not covered, project people? What am I going to do when it happens anyway?
Corrective actions?
Corrective or contingency action. People will use both words in that, because if the bad things happen, or if the bad thing happens, I want to at least put some thought into what am I going to do? You know, I've said I'm going to prevent this utilities problem by having someone look at the utilities early and modify the utilities and yada, yada, yada. Well, then they send me a pump and I go to plug them in and I still don't have the right plugs, right? What's my contingency at that point? Yeah, but somebody, you know, I might change the plug, I might modify the utilities, I might order a different pump, I might, right? I might call the vendor and say, hey, you need to come out here, you told me this was gonna be this, right? Why is that of value to a project management professional? That you think about contingency actions now, not when it happens.
You're not surprised that.
Cheaper.
It's
You have
cheaper.
You have more options.
I have more options. I've thought it through with my team. It's just not me. I'm moving from a firefighting mode to a, oh, we've thought about this. We considered these 4 things. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what should we do? What should we do now? Is schedule more important? Is cost more important? You know, they can get us a new one here in 3 weeks. Or we can go spend the money to modify the utility system. Or we, right? Because here's the things we thought of. My point in this is just recognize that this is a really valuable tool. And you do some of this anyway. We do some of this intuitively. We don't use the form and we don't normally do it in any kind of a formal way. But when you get ready to go on vacation, you're going to drive from here to Arizona and spend 2 weeks out there playing golf. Right? So what goes through your mind?
You gotta regrip your gloves.
All right, I need to regrip my clubs. What am I going to do if I get out there and, you know,
Get the car checked before you get on the road.
yeah, why?
It's a pain to break down in the middle of the trip.
Yeah. So what's the potential problem? You just said the car breaks down in the middle of a trip.
Schedule.
So what am I going to do to prevent that? I'm going to get the car checked out.
Rent a car.
What am I going to do when that happens anyway?
Call AAA.
Call AAA. Now, you might say, how am I going to prevent that? I'm going to rent a car. Right? Then what happens if it breaks down anyway? They'll give me another one. Right? They'll call them, or I'll call them in Memphis and say, Enterprise, pick me up. Right? But you see how you intuitively do this, but we don't do it formally, and for projects it can be really powerful if we'll just spend a little bit of extra time. And I say a little bit of extra time. If you do it on the front end, like we talked about, it could save us lots and lots of time and money and effort because I've already got that preventative action in there. One of my favorites is, why do we have vendor surveillance programs? Is a vendor surveillance program a preventative action or a contingency action? Preventative, is that what you said? Preventative. Why is it a preventative?
You don't receive something.
Yeah. I want to, what did you say?
You don't wanna receive something's broken, you take it out to them, right?
Yeah.
Prove to it.
I don't want them to send me something that's wrong or bad or heaven forbid the wrong color, right? I want to make sure that what shows up is exactly what we need. So in a lot of cases, if it's really important, I'll have a vendor surveillance program that's, have you been on those projects where I actually have a person living in your facility watching you build that piece of equipment that's going to be mine? Yeah. Well, that's what that's about, right? Is preventing that bad thing from happening. You sent me the wrong one. It has the wrong plug on it. You know, the outlet's on the top instead of the bottom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't do vendor surveillance because we think that's a fun thing to do. We do it because it prevents problems that could be way more costly than just getting the wrong piece of equipment or the wrong whatever, piece of software, computer. Okay, everybody comfortable with that? From a risk management perspective, that's a really valuable tool. Okay, let's talk about HR. Learning objectives. I'm going to say again, I'm not going to go through inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. I'm assuming now that you guys understand the model, how the pieces work together, and that all of this is interrelated. You know those two forms. All right. I told you earlier that one of the most important parts of this section has to do with managing teams. Early on, we showed you a couple of slides that say, what do the most effective teams, the most effective projects look like? Let me say it even better. What does the research say that those look like? And then many of you gave me that back in the answer to your midterm exam question. Some of you got really creative and came up with your own really creative list, and so now I have to struggle with whether or not it fits into that model. Okay? Remember me saying, this would be a really good question? That's why I said that, so it makes it easy to grade. It's about me. Sorry. Okay, so you remember effective teams look like, or successful teams, successful projects look like what?
You want us to read off of it?
Yeah, go ahead. Challenging word.
Clear, objective.
Over communication.
Okay, does everybody remember that list? I'm going to tell you now, it's going to be on the final. Okay? And the only right answer is going to be this. Okay? And it's going to be worth 190 points.
Of 200?
Out of 200. Okay, so the point there is we know what right looks like. And we talked about this, right? We talked about what each one of these meant and why those were important. What's the somebody describe the concept of over communication to me?
The teenage rule.
The teenage rule, what does that mean?
Say it 5 times.
Or they're
Okay,
In different
accountable.
formats. is that-
before what? You said before they're accountable. There's a subtlety to that. What's the real way to say that?
Or you hold them responsible.
Before I can hold them accountable, right? It's still about me as the project manager. I'm still responsible. Have any of you read there's a really good, Extreme Ownership. Have any of you read that by any chance? It's a book written by a group of Navy SEALs, and it's about leadership. And if you want to read something about leadership, I'm right in the middle of this book right now, but it is really, really cool, really, really interesting. From a Navy SEALs or a group of Navy SEALs perspective, who's responsible if the intelligence is bad and the mission goes bad?
Commanding officer.
Bingo. Who's responsible if they get out to the field and they've moved someone from one facility to another, so therefore he's not there, he's here, but we still have to go get him there? Who's responsible?
Commanding officer.
Every time. There is no blame. There is responsibility of the commanding officer. That's the attitude that we're looking for from a project manager. Well, yeah, but they gave me the wrong spec. Yeah, but they told me they would deliver it now. Or they told me to deliver it on Tuesday. Yeah, but they told me they would send me red and they sent me blue. Right? Who's responsible?
You.
The project manager is. And so the question then becomes, what could I have done to think about that and prevent that? And, you know, if one of my team members is not capable of doing their job, who's responsible?
Commanding officer.
Right? Because whose responsibility is to get them trained and get them capable and make sure they're the right person. Well, yeah, but they assigned her to my team and I didn't know she was not capable of it. Right? Who's responsible? So, all right. So anyway, I got way off that, but back to the over communication. That communication concept is about me understanding that it's my responsibility to communicate that message enough times so that my team understands what are the requirements, What are the tools? What are we trying to do here, right? Right? And taking ownership of that. Is that fair?
Nope.
No, it's not fair. But that's the way it works. So, now, you've been on those teams. Oh, we'll talk about that. I need to, because I want to get to that other point later. All right, team input, shared effort. Now, what's the difference between those two? Did we talk about this?
Between what?
Between team input and shared effort.
Well, team input means that you ask the collective group and you come to a collective decision, and then the second one is
Shared
that
effort.
Everybody owns a piece of it to go.
So if I'm the leader, my job is to make sure you guys know what to do and tell you what to do, right? Am I involved in the doing? Okay. Now, I have to be careful here because, remember, I want you to see me as a part of the team and I am responsible for, so I've got to be participating, but we've also said that as a project manager, you need to be really careful that you don't get out there and become the SME, right? So see that balance there? The team has got to understand that what I'm doing is of value to them and to the effort and to accomplishing the work without me doing their job. Remember that discussion? So good description there. And then we said, and I think in the other slide it says good leadership in quotes. And I said, can you define good leadership? And is it one of those things that I know it when I see it kind of thing? It gets exposed in really, really critical times. So I said there is some research related to what good leadership looks like. And my favorite is Cousins and Posner's work. And did some of you say that Y12 had done some things? Who told me that related to Cousins and Posner? The book is called The Leadership Challenge. And they looked at thousands of organizations, thousands of managers and leaders and said, what are the critical attributes of a good leader? And of course, that begs a question, right?
Are they born or made?
Huh?
Are they born or made? Is that
Well, that's a good question we talked about a little bit ago, but if I say this is what makes up a good leader, I'm making some assumptions about what a good leader, what the results of a good leader are, aren't I? I'm saying, and I just said, they did an analysis of thousands of organizations and said, this is what good leadership looked like. Well, they had to look at those organizations and say they are successful either. They're growing, they have high customer satisfaction ratings, they have low employee turnover, they have high employee satisfaction ratings. Do you see what I'm telling you there? If I just say good leadership was measured by looking at 1,000 organizations, then in your mind you should say, well, what in those organizations did they look at? Were they looking at political organizations, military organizations, businesses, independent, not-for-profit kind of organizations? Well, the answer is yes. They looked at a cross-section of organizations, so I feel comfortable with the results of their research. What did they find? That leadership attributes, primarily these 5, are what leads to successful organizations. So this is the definition of good leadership, which is an element of successful projects. Now, why do you care about what I just said?
because it's going to be on the exam.
That's the first reason. What's the second reason you care?
Because we're not naturally good leaders, as engineers or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? We need to learn that shit.
We want to make people work on our projects. Get it done.
Yeah, there are a couple of things to what you got. You got another comment before I...
What's that last?
Yeah, the heart.
Oh, encourage the heart. I ran out of energy. But listen to what you just said, because that's the point. It's not natural for us. Some of you, it probably is. You know, you were good in the band or drama or sports or somewhere you always tended to be in that leadership role, and it's natural for you. The majority of people that end up in technical programs or technology kinds of activities, that's not the way we just generally act or live. So we had to learn, what is that? And for most of us, we have to push ourselves out of the shell. Well, what does that look like? Challenge the process. Good leaders challenge the process. Good leaders inspire a shared vision. Good leaders enable others to act. So that's what you guys were saying a minute ago. It's my job to make sure that I remove, give you a better way to do the job, make sure you understand exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then I make it easy for you to get your job done, right? And then model the way. That's that kind of concept at the intersection that I was talking about a minute ago. Is it my job to do it or to make sure you're capable of doing it? Well, turns out I've got to live at that interface. I got to not be the subject matter expert, but I've got to be good enough at participating in the team to make sure that my team understands I'm there for you. I'm involved in this. I'm invested in this. And then the other, and my mentor likes to point out every time he says this, and he's 80 years old, so he's got way more experience than I do, but he says, encourage the heart. This is the only time in research that he's seen where the research came back and said one of your jobs as a leader is to encourage the heart of your team. What in the world does that mean? And more importantly, what does that imply? Here's something really key for you guys as you sit in that seat.
Well, they got to have the buy-in to be able to want to do what you're asking them to do. So you got to give them ownership of the process.
All right, that's good, and all of that's true. Can you keep going down that line? There's just a little bit more to it. What's the implication of what you said? If I'm going to encourage your heart and do like you described, what does that assume about me?
Well, you care.
That
You care about it. You have a heart. Yes.
That I have a heart, that I care, and you're going right down the right path. You're exactly right. That I care about
Yeah.
them, my team. What else does it assume? Because you are right there at it now.
Assumes
If
that you
I'm
know.
going to encourage your heart, what?
You have to be on a level to actually know when it needs encouraging, being involved in that.
Okay. Now you're right at it. I have to be on the level where I know
What makes them tick? You don't know
what
how
makes
to
them
encourage
tick. So what are you assuming then?
You know that you're involved.
That I know them. That I know what's important to them. I know what's going to make a difference. I know that they're right at that point of, right? So one of the things that this talks about is the fact that if you're going to be a good leader, you need to know your team. You need to know about them. You need to know what makes them tick. You need to know what's important to them. Now, what does that assume then? People who hate communication?
That you have to do.
You have to do it. Remember when I described the manager a minute ago? I said the manager comes in the morning, tells you exactly what to do, and then what does he do? Goes in his office and shuts the door. All right? What does this assume?
Open door policy.
Open door, and even more than open door, what else?
He's out with his people.
Out with the people. Talking, listening, right? What's going on? What's important?
How's your mom?
How's your mama? Yeah. So there are some, but behind those 5 things right there are some really important concepts for you people who have said, now maybe some of you have said, okay, I need this class to get my master's degree. And that's fine too. Some of you have said, hey, I think I might like to be a project manager. because I like getting things done, I like the idea of managing, I like the idea of working through others, I like the idea of seeing things accomplished, and that happens in the project management world. I think I might like to do this. What I'm saying is, this is what the job looks like. Right? Here is your seat on a plane that's doing this stuff. If you want to have really good teams and you want to have, you want to be a good leader of people, okay? All right. That's going to be on the test. There will be one right answer. All right. From a definitions perspective, here's a slide to include in. We talk about routinely when we talk about developing teams, pulling teams together, getting the right people on the team. We talk about roles and responsibilities and authority and competency, and those words come up. Those words have definitions, and we need to understand when I talk to someone about their roles and responsibility or their role and what they're responsible for, I need to understand what I'm communicating with them. So many times we use some of these words as almost buzzwords, and we don't really get to the what is it I'm trying to make happen here. Now, let me make sure that I don't push us too far. Am I calling for job descriptions that tie down the job requirements of every person on the team to the nth degree so that I can measure their success in that job? That's not the point. That is where the bureaucracy will push us though, right? If we take this to its ultimate extreme, the bureaucracy will say, you can only do this job if you live in this bubble and you have this capability and yada, yada, yada. All right, now let me also be careful and say, are there some kinds of jobs where you want to make sure that the competency and the responsibilities are super tied down and only people with certain capabilities do those jobs?
Yes.
Right? Heart surgeons comes to mind. Nuclear operators come to mind, right? I want to make sure that those people are competent and have proven their competency before they start to do that job. As a project manager, as you start to talk about teams, those kind of issues come up. Sometimes they're growth opportunities for someone. Sometimes we're really, it's really incumbent upon us as the project manager to make sure we have the person with the right capabilities in that role. Okay? I don't think I'll talk about that here. There's another place I want to talk about that. Did Tony talk to you guys about OPAs and EEFs? And probably not as it relates to human resource. I bet he didn't talk about that. Remember that when we said OPAs and EEFs, we said OPAs primarily relate to what? Internal to the project, right? Because if it's within an organization, it might be internal to the organization, but external to the project. But primarily it's internal. And EEFs are primarily external to the project, right? So, you as a team member, are you an OPA or an EEF? It turns out that's the exception. You are on that project, but you are not an asset. Does that bother any of you?
Ouch.
Yeah, that was my reaction too. Ouch. You are an enterprise environmental factor. Okay? So, look it up. You can argue about it. You can disagree with it. But that's one of those situations where PMI says You are an EEF, not an OPA. All right, so not that that really matters unless you're going to take the test. And that won't be on the test because we could have a long conversation about that. Another concept I want us to think a little bit about has to do with virtual teams and the fact that this is becoming a big deal. And we talked about it, I think, a little bit when we talked about communication and the issues that come up with communication as you think about virtual teams and global teams and people, you know, the different language barriers and technology barriers and time zone barriers. You remember that conversation related to communication and how it impacts communication? Well, when you think about teams and team development, put a little bug in your ear or bug in your notes that says, oh, I bet there are some interesting issues that relate to team selection or team development or team involvement when you start to think about virtual teams. Does anything immediately come to mind? Now remember what our space is. What hat do we have on right now? Human resources, right? We're in the project management world, but we're talking specifically about human resources. So now I say virtual teams, what kind of things come to mind? I'm selecting my team. I'm developing my team. I'm managing my team. And now I've said to you, one of the things that's going on in the project management world right now, big time, is the development and use of virtual teams. Why are we using virtual teams right now, predominantly? Say again? That's right. We're being driven by cost. Right? Now, yes, it is possible that we may have virtual teams because I can get a hold of a subject matter expert that's not available in the geography I'm in, and that could be a real benefit. That could be a bonus, and that's a positive of virtual teams. What are the potential downsides of virtual teams?
Their communication is obviously affected by time and distance,
Yeah.
sometimes language barriers.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the kind of thought I want you to put on, because wouldn't that make a really nice one of those bottom questions down there that says, talk to me about the relationship between or the issues associated with implementing virtual teams. What are the positives? Okay, we know that cost is a positive. Can you think of other positives?
That's
Time difference.
Okay, how would that be a positive?
So, like say overnight stuff. It's in my book.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good.
So it should be like, so a hospital that needs x-rays to be read, they'll send it off to Australia, it's their daytime, so they'll do it for them instead of
Yeah.
like hiring someone overnight, so lower your cost, but get someone to do your work.
Yeah, good. When I worked for Parsons, we would have projects that would actually move around the world electronically. And they really didn't move, but you know, somebody would work on them, and when it came daytime somewhere else, somebody else would work on them. But now part of that was related to cost, but part of it was schedule acceleration. So there are some positives with virtual teams. There are also some concerns. Did somebody over here have a comment or thought I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but it could have been one of you smacking the other?
I said accountability for a negative.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I would buy that. It's when you're not there, you know. I may have told you guys that story about I had a lady that worked for me virtually, and the client loved her. She did fabulous work, but she never had to come in to the office. So how do you think the others in the office felt about that?
Yeah.
That's not fair. She didn't have to drive. So, did I tell you this story already?
No.
So I had this conversation with her that said, look, you're doing a fabulous job. Things are going great. Client loves you. I appreciate what you're doing. You know, keep it up. I just want you to know that there are some concerns, yada, 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 yada. From a professional development perspective and a team development perspective, it's probably in your best interest that you come in every once in a while, right? Now, why so? Because my project's not going to last forever. and you're gonna be looking for a next project. And these other project managers and these other team members, if they don't know you, and they don't know what kind of work you do, right? There's some accountability there, because they're gonna say, hey, I have no idea who she is, what she does, what her capabilities are. So from your professional career development perspective, it's in your best interest if you develop, additional networks, because at some point you're gonna want to be there. So be ready to talk about that. Virtual teams. There you go. Communication, built-in disadvantages. You can, there you are. There's your study slide. Oh, that talks about acquiring the team, and there's one thing I want you to, or not one thing, one concept I want you to think about relative to developing project teams. Do I prefer a team made up of highly skilled, multi-year experience, very talented, senior technical resources, or do I prefer a team full of really, really, really inexpensive junior people right out of school?
A combination of the two.
Why a combination of the two?
Because people kind of, if they're the experts, they kind of get blinders on. They kind of get used to the process, and then the other people will start asking challenging questions of, well, why do you do it that way, or why is it done this way?
All right, what other benefits do junior people right out of school bring to the?
Cheap.
They actually work.
They're cheap.
They actually work, they're cheap, what else?
New perspective, new technology.
There you go, new technology, new perspective, they've seen the latest problems, right? And that's the point to understand, it's not this or this. From a cost perspective, which is cheaper? Can you make a case for the senior people being cheaper? Can you make a case for the junior people? See, what you would hope in the perfect world, and we all know this doesn't work, is that these people are going to be able to get it done in a week, and these people, it's going to take them 3 weeks, but they cost a third of what these people cost. So you would hope that the model would say it's going to balance out. Right? Now, as a project manager, you have to go through that analysis and say what's the right combination. And then when you get to choose your project team, which happens how many times? Zero. Never. Right? But you're going to get input. You're going to get feedback. You're going to get to be involved in that. The point for us there as project people is to understand that analysis of this is not a black and white issue. It's not about, especially if I put it in the perspective of what's best for our company long-term strategically, because the analysis you just went through has to do with developing that capabilities over a longer period of time, drawing in that experience and expertise that the people getting right out of school have with those people that have 20 plus years of experience. And somewhere in there, there's the right model for the company as a whole as we move forward. All right? All right. Team development. I think we've talked about this just a little bit, but forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, that is a team development life cycle, and you understand that that's a cycle teams go through. What's the bottom line lesson to be learned about this as a team development cycle? You as a project manager, why is it important that you know this?
So you can recognize where you are in the stage.
That is true. It's a little bit more subtle than that. He said recognize where you are in the development cycle, what stage you're in. What is it about that matters?
Make sure you go through all 5.
Okay, you're going to go through all 5, so I won't have to force it, but a little bit more than that. Some thought?
It's just a stage.
I think how you communicate during that time too.
Okay, yes, that's a piece of it, and what were you saying?
That this too shall pass. It's just a stage.
Okay, that's kind of the concept we want to get to, is if I as a leader understand that my team's going to go through a stormy period and we're going to have some of that, well, just because you're in the military or just because you're a nuclear reactor doesn't mean you know everything there is to know about, or just because you've had one project management class doesn't make you an expert, right? If I know that's going to happen and I know it's part of the process, as the leader and the manager, I can manage us through that. And I may even say, I don't remember which of you said it a minute ago, I may even say, look, ladies and gentlemen, this is a normal part of team development. This is okay. I want you to say what you believe. I want you to get on the table how important you think this is, right? We might do it a little bit more professionally and not, but this is part of getting where we're going to get. So that's the bottom line issue for us as project management people. If I understand this is a normal part of developing a high performance team, then I'm not going to get sideways when there are disagreements. And I'm going to understand that people are really just looking for what's their role. Norming is about us understanding what's the right role for me, what's the right role for you, how do we work together, and how do we get there on the same page. So don't just see this as some kind of a, somebody did a piece of research. It's something you can use if you understand that exists, and we're going to go through that cycle. All right. All right. I want to talk about 3 of these. Motivational theories. Who's comfortable with these? Maslow, McGregor, Hertzberg? Okay. Does anybody know Maslow? Okay. A few of us. Okay, good. Abraham Maslow developed a needs hierarchy that essentially says that there's a hierarchy of needs, and unless the lower level, let me say it better. When the lower level need is met, then the desire to meet the next level need is motivational. So, is that physiological? Physiological.
Safety.
Thank you. Safety. Social. Esteem.
Self-actualization.
And self-actualization. So what that says is, if I have food to eat and I have safe drinking water, then I am motivated to meet a safety need, to find a house and a place that I can be protected. But if I don't have clean water, or I don't have any food to eat, I am not motivated by getting a better house, or a cleaner house, or a nice house. But you know what? If I have a comfortable place to live, and I'm able to have a meal on a regular basis, then I have a need to be part of a social system. I want to belong. I want to be a part of something. And so I am motivated by becoming part of a social group, right? If that need is being met and I'm comfortable and we have a good team and I enjoy my work and I enjoy my Rotary Club meetings and my church meetings and I'm part of the choir at church and then you know what? Then I am motivated by a desire to be recognized, to be something special as a part, maybe as a part of one of those groups, but to get some kind of an award, and that might be a musical award, or our choir may get an award, or our team might get an award, or seek award, or we might look to become certified, ISO certified, but there's some kind of recognition. And once those kind of needs are being met, then I am motivated to self-actualize. And what that really means, that's the highest level need where I'm just looking to do something that matters, that's meaningful. It's not about the money, it's not about the recognition necessarily, it's just about doing the right thing or doing something that's important. So he set this up as a model, and it becomes a useful model for understanding what motivates people to put in the extra effort, to go a little bit beyond, to want to do something special. So let me ask you, where do you think most blue collar workers live? Right, somewhere in most, not all. You can, and I can come up with some great examples that are absolutely not true. But just in general, here, where do you think most white collar managers and supervisors live? Right? The social needs are met, right? The esteem needs are met because I'm the boss. And so therefore I'm getting, and you know, I'm doing this because it doesn't matter. We'll work for $1 then. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Right? So I'm not self-actualizing, I'm really looking for esteem because I need a high salary to feel important. Sorry, high voice, my bad. The point is just to understand that if I as a manager or a team leader recognize where my people are, then I can say, oh, there are things I can do that motivate people. We can start teams, we can start recognition programs, and there can be positive. Now there are weeks worth of discussion on what are good and bad about recognition programs and employee of the day programs, and all of that. And we've done that extremely poorly in implementing these programs. But for us as project people, what does this relate to that we just talked about, your role as a good leader? Encouraging the heart, which implies I know something about my people, which implies I know something about where they are. Now, if I said to you, tell me about Joe in your that works for you, and you said, okay, Joe has a master's degree and she's been in this job for 5 years and she does a really good job and she won a couple awards over the last year, where would you say Joe is on the needs hierarchy? Esteem, right? At a minimum, esteem in here. All right. Is it possible for Joe to move up or down this? How so? What happens?
Because then management comes in and says, we need to put more money to something else, so we're gonna fire a bunch of you.
Whoa! Now where is she now? Boom, right here. We were doing some training down in Huntsville a few years ago. Many of you may remember exactly when this was, but remember when the tornadoes came through North Alabama and they just ripped everything up down there, all